Private Marcus Hale had never expected outer space to feel so dull. When he was a boy back on Earth, he dreamed of rockets roaring through the skies, endless stars stretched like diamonds, and heroic battles against alien foes. Now that he was actually serving in the Earth Defense Corps, stationed on a neutral asteroid outpost, his daily life was mostly long hours of training drills, routine patrols, and standing guard while officers debated politics. The asteroid station was a massive dome built into rock and steel, its corridors humming with the sound of machines. Ships from many worlds came and went, docking in the vast hangar bays. Soldiers of Earth walked side by side with alien officers, their uniforms showing, bright crests of their different star nations. The atmosphere was supposed to be one of peace and cooperation, but Marcus often felt tension hanging in the air like a storm that refused to break. Still, Marcus did his best to keep his spirit light. He was known in his squad as the one who cracked jokes even during long marches, who shared snacks from home, and who always had a grin, no matter how tiring the drills became. To him, a smile could break down barriers faster than a laser cannon. On that particular day, after hours of joint exercises between Earth forces and alien fleets, Marcus found himself wandering through the quieter sections of the outpost. His helmet was tucked under his arm, and the sweat on his forehead cooled quickly in the recycled air. The training ground had been crowded and noisy, but here in the dimly lit halls, only the distant hum of power conduits filled the silence. That was when he saw her. She stood near a viewport that looked out into the stars. Tall, slender, and dressed in dark uniform robes that shimmered faintly under the artificial lights, the woman gave off an aura unlike anyone Marcus had ever met. Her skin was pale, almost luminous, and her long hair flowed like black silk. Her eyes glowed faintly crimson, sharp and unreadable, like those of a predator watching silently from the shadows. For a moment, Marcus thought she was simply another officer from one of the more mysterious alien delegations. Many species still unsettled him, though he tried not to show it. But there was something different about her. She did not carry herself like a soldier. She looked like someone who commanded armies without ever needing to raise her voice. Sitki. Corridor was wide, but somehow Marcus felt like the space shrank the longer he looked at her. She turned her gaze to him, and the weight of that stare nearly froze him in his tracks. Most soldiers would have bowed or saluted, even without knowing who she was. But Marcus, ever the kind of person who disliked stiff formality, reacted in his own way. He gave her a casual smile, raised his fist, and said, "Hey, good job out there." The words tumbled out before he even thought about them. He had seen her earlier at the edge of the training field, standing still and observing the maneuvers. To him, it only seemed natural to treat her like anyone else who had just gone through a long drill. At first, silence filled the air. Her expression did not change. Her crimson eyes seemed to search his very soul, as if weighing him against centuries of knowledge. Marcus wondered if he had just made a huge mistake. His squad leaders often told him that not all species appreciated Earth's casual friendliness. But then slowly she raised her hand. Her fingers curled and she touched her knuckles to his in a faint, almost delicate fist bump. The moment was small. It lasted no longer than a breath. Yet Marcus felt a strange warmth pass between them. He grinned wider, nodded politely, and continued walking, thinking nothing more of it. Behind him, the woman remained by the viewport, her hand lingering in the air where their fists had met. She had never been greeted in such a way before. Among her people touch was sacred. Among rulers it was unthinkable, and yet for the first time in years she found herself smiling ever so slightly. What Marcus did not know, what no one in the Earth ranks yet realized, was that this woman was Lady Seraphine Devora, the newly crowned Empress of the Galactic Dominion. Her empire stretched across dozens of systems, feared by many, respected by all. Even here on a neutral asteroid where peace was carefully maintained, her presence commanded silence and awe. She was not supposed to mingle with common soldiers. She was not supposed to allow casual contact. And yet, this one human's simple gesture had cut through all protocol. As Marcus walked away, humming a tune to himself, Seraphine's advisors appeared at the far end of the corridor. They bowed low, their faces pale with shock when they realized what had just occurred. One of them dared to whisper, "Your Majesty, he touched you." Seraphine silenced them with a single glance. "Yes," she replied calmly, her voice soft, but carrying hidden weight. "And he did not tremble." Her words puzzled the advisors, but they dared not question further. The Empress rarely explained her thoughts. Yet inside her heart she felt a curiosity she had not experienced in centuries. Humans were still newcomers on the galactic stage, often seen as brash and reckless. But perhaps, she thought, there was something more to them. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his barracks, plopping down on his bunk with a sigh. "Man," he muttered to his squadmate, "I just met the strangest officer. Didn't say much, but hey, at least she fist-bumped me back." His friend chuckled and shook his head. "You and your weird greetings, Hale. One day you're going to get yourself in serious trouble." Marcus only laughed. Trouble to him was part of the adventure. But outside those barracks walls, the galaxy had already begun to stir. Whispers would spread. Questions would rise, and many would wonder why the Galactic Empress herself had acknowledged a simple human soldier's gesture. For Marcus, it was just another day. For the galaxy, it was the beginning of something no one could have predicted. The asteroid outpost always seemed busy, yet Marcus Hale never noticed the invisible eyes that now followed his every move. To him, life went on as usual. Morning drills, shared meals with his squad, and late-night laughter in the barracks. He thought nothing of the quiet woman he had fist-bumped in the corridor. It was only a friendly gesture, the kind he would offer to anyone. But for others, that moment had become the center of attention. Lady Seraphine Devora, newly crowned Empress of the Galactic Dominion, had been seen acknowledging a human soldier's casual greeting. To most nobles of her empire, this was unthinkable. Touching the Empress without her command was nearly a crime, yet instead of punishment, she had allowed it. Even worse, she had returned the gesture. Among alien officers and diplomats stationed at the outpost, whispers spread like wildfire. In the dining halls, in the communication chambers, in private quarters behind closed doors, everyone discussed the same question. Who was that human soldier? Many laughed at the idea that such a small act could matter. Others were furious, believing it insulted the Empress's honor. A few, however, watched with quiet interest, wondering if the human had done something no one else dared to do, treat Seraphine not as a ruler, but simply as another person. Marcus remained unaware of this storm. His squad noticed nothing unusual either, though they did see more alien soldiers watching them during training. "Feels like we're being stared at," muttered Corporal Rena, his closest friend in the unit. Marcus shrugged. "Maybe they're just impressed by how fast I run. Humans are quick, you know." Rena rolled her eyes. "Or maybe you did something stupid again." Marcus laughed, not taking her seriously. He had no idea how close to the truth she was. That evening, Seraphine sat in a private chamber reserved for high-ranking officials. Around her stood three of her closest advisors: Lord Veyron, a tall figure with silver markings on his skin; Lady Calith, sharp-eyed and cautious; and General Karos, her loyal commander who had served through countless wars. They stood in silence as the Empress reviewed a digital screen, the image frozen on the moment Marcus extended his fist. The station's security feeds had captured everything. "It spreads too quickly, my Empress," whispered Lady Calith. "Already the lesser nobles speak of it as a scandal. Some say you allow disrespect." General Karos's voice was deeper, rougher. "If it pleases you, Majesty, I will deal with the soldier. Quietly. A warning, perhaps, or removal." Seraphine's crimson eyes lifted slowly from the screen. She looked at her general for a long moment before speaking. "Removal? For what? Crime for offering me kindness?" The room grew colder with her words. No one dared to interrupt her. Finally she continued. "This human did not know who I was. He did not tremble, nor flatter, nor scheme. He treated me as one would treat a comrade. Tell me, when was the last time one of you looked at me without fear in your eyes?" Her advisors fell silent. None dared to answer, Seraphine turned back to the image of Marcus. In her long life, she had commanded fleets, bent planets to her will, and crushed rebellions with a single command. But never had someone so simple, so unrefined, offered her something as strange as a fist bump. It was not respect in the traditional sense, it was something else. Equal standing, and it unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The following day, Marcus noticed something unusual. During the joint briefing, while officers of various species discussed fleet maneuvers, he caught sight of the pale woman again. She entered the hall with slow, graceful steps, her long cloak trailing behind her like flowing shadow. Every alien officer bowed low. Some even lowered their heads to the floor. But Marcus only gave a polite nod when their eyes met. To his surprise, she inclined her head slightly in return. Rena nudged him sharply in the ribs. "Are you insane? That's Lady Seraphine Devora. Don't you know who she is?" Marcus blinked. "Wait, you know her?" "Everyone knows her," Rena hissed under her breath. "That's the Empress of the Dominion, the one whose fleets stretched across half the galaxy before the peace accords, the most feared leader in this sector." Marcus nearly choked. He stared at Seraphine again, his mind racing back to the fist bump. His grin faltered, replaced by shock. "I fist bumped an Empress?" Rena groaned, covering her face. "Marcus, one of these days your mouth is going to get us all in trouble." But the Empress had already moved to her seat at the head of the table, and her expression gave away nothing. As the days passed, Marcus began to feel the weight of attention pressing on him. Alien nobles glared as he walked by. Some muttered insults in languages he barely understood. During training, a few deliberately challenged him, testing his strength, mocking his reflexes. Marcus did not back down. He never liked bullies. If they shoved him, he shoved back, though he stopped short of real fights. Still, the hostility was clear. One night, as he sat alone in the mess hall, a shadow fell across his table. Looking up, Marcus saw the Empress herself standing there, her red eyes calm, her presence heavy like the weight of 1,000 stars. "Private Marcus Hale," she said softly. Marcus jumped to his feet so quickly his tray clattered. Your Highness? Your Majesty? Your Empressness?" He stumbled over the titles, unsure which was right. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You may call me Seraphine." He blinked. "Seriously?" "Yes. Sit." Marcus obeyed, heart hammering. The most powerful ruler in the galaxy had just chosen to sit across from him at a simple soldier's table. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus, never one to stay silent for long, said, I didn't mean any offense the other day. With the fist bump. That's just something humans do." Seraphine tilted her head. "Explain." Marcus lifted his fist again and held it out. "It's like a sign of respect, or friendship. It means we're equals, that we're good with each other. Nothing fancy, just simple." Her eyes studied his hand. Then slowly she raised her own and touched her knuckles to his again. "I see," she murmured. "Simple, yet powerful." For the first time, Marcus noticed the faint curve of amusement in her expression. It was not the cold smile of a ruler, but something warmer, something almost human. At that exact moment, several alien nobles entered the hall. Their faces twisted in outrage at the sight of their Empress sharing a soldier's gesture. Whispers spread again, sharper this time, like blades slicing through the air. But Seraphine ignored them. She finished her meal in silence, then rose gracefully. Before leaving, she turned to Marcus once more and said, "We will speak again." Then she was gone, her cloak sweeping behind her like a tide of darkness. Marcus sat frozen, unsure whether he had just made the best friend or the most dangerous connection of his life. That night, Seraphine stood by her chamber's viewport again, watching the endless stars. For centuries she had ruled through fear, her people bowing to her name. Yet one human soldier had shown her something new, unpolished honesty, unshaken by her crown. In the shadows, her advisors whispered about danger, scandal, and protocol. But Seraphine's thoughts drifted elsewhere. Perhaps, she wondered, humanity was not as primitive as the nobles claimed. Perhaps in their reckless courage and strange gestures they held a strength her empire had forgotten. And somewhere in the barracks, Marcus Hale lay awake in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, muttering to himself, "Of all the people I could have fist-bumped. Why did it have to be the Galactic Empress?" The stars outside shimmered silently, as if waiting for the answer. The great hall of the asteroid outpost was alive with voices, lights, and the clinking of glasses. Banners of many star nations hung high above the curved walls, shimmering in the artificial air. It was the night of a diplomatic reception, meant to celebrate the successful joint exercises between Earth's defense forces and the fleets of the Galactic Dominion. Soldiers stood awkwardly in polished uniforms. Nobles in elegant robes floated between tables, speaking in low tones. The smell of alien spices mixed with the familiar scent of Earth coffee, carried on trays by service drones. It was a place of formality, where every word was measured, every gesture carefully weighed. Marcus Hale had never felt more out of place in his life. He tugged at the collar of his stiff uniform, which itched against his neck. Around him, his squad mates looked equally uncomfortable, but at least they knew better than to speak too loudly. Marcus, however, had trouble staying quiet. "Why do these things always feel like funerals?" he muttered to Rena, who stood beside him. "Because," she whispered back, "if you say the wrong thing, it might turn into one." Marcus smirked, but before he could reply, a hush fell over the hall. The sound of boots against polished floors echoed as the Empress herself entered. Lady Seraphine Devora moved with slow, deliberate grace. Her cloak trailed behind her, her pale skin almost glowing under the lights, her crimson eyes sharp as burning coals. Instantly the room bent to her presence. Nobles bowed deeply. Officers lowered their heads. Even the drones paused, their programming, forcing a respectful stillness. Only the humans, still not used to such customs, shifted awkwardly. Marcus tried to bow like the others, but it came out more like a stiff nod. When he looked up, he found Seraphine's gaze resting on him for just a heartbeat longer than on anyone else. That look alone was enough to send another ripple of whispers through the crowd. The reception began with speeches. Commanders from Earth spoke of cooperation, trade, and friendship. Alien dignitaries offered long praises to the Empress, their words heavy with flattery. Each time, Seraphine listened in silence, her face unreadable. When one noble from the Dominion rose, his tone was sharper. His name was Lord Trassic, and he had long opposed the idea of working with humans. His skin shimmered with green scales, and his narrow eyes glared as he spoke. "Majesty," he said loudly so all could hear, "I cannot understand this decision to lower ourselves to work alongside such primitive creatures. Humanity has barely taken its first steps into the stars. They stumble, they joke, they insult traditions without knowing. Are these truly allies worthy of our fleets?" The room went still. Every human soldier stiffened, hands curling at their sides. Rena bit her lip, glaring at the noble, but said nothing. Marcus, however, felt heat rising in his chest. He glanced at Seraphine. She had not reacted, her crimson eyes fixed calmly on the noble. No one else spoke. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, and then, before Rena could stop him, Marcus raised his hand. The hall turned as one to look at him. Dozens of eyes, alien and human alike, stared in disbelief. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice steady though his heart pounded. With respect, he said, "I think you're wrong." Gasps echoed. A low murmur spread. To interrupt a noble during a reception was nearly unheard of. Lord Trassic hissed, his scales glinting under the lights. "And who are you to speak, human soldier?" Marcus straightened his shoulders. "Private Marcus Hale. And I may be just a soldier, but I've got something to say." He stepped forward, his voice louder now, carrying through the hall. "You say humans are primitive. Maybe we are. but we've survived more than you think. On Earth, we've faced disasters that could wipe out nations, storms, quakes, wars, plagues, and yet every time we stand back up. We don't stay broken. We rebuild. We grow stronger. That's what we do." He paused, scanning the faces around him. Some sneered. Others listened. He saw Seraphine watching him closely, her expression still calm but her eyes glowing brighter. "Sure, we joke," Marcus continued, "and maybe we don't follow every rule the way you do, but that doesn't mean we're weak. It means we're human. We fight, we laugh, we share. We don't need titles or crowns to know someone matters. If we see a person standing alone, we'll offer a hand, or a fist bump." The last words slipped out before he could stop them. A ripple of confused murmurs spread again. Marcus flushed, realizing he had just brought up the very thing causing whispers across the station. But it was too late to take it back. Lord Trassic snarled, "Empty words. Humanity is nothing." Marcus met his gaze, unflinching. "Maybe. But if humanity is nothing, then how did a simple soldier make the Empress smile?" The hall froze. Marcus's words hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone's gaze turned to Seraphine. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, very slowly, her lips curved into the faintest smile. The crowd erupted with murmurs, some shocked, some angry, some amazed. Lord Trassic stiffened, his face darkening, but he dared not argue further in front of his ruler. Seraphine's voice cut through the noise. "Enough. Let it be remembered that courage is not measured by rank. This human has spoken truth." The hall went silent again. Then the Empress rose, her cloak sweeping behind her. Without another word, she left the chamber. Marcus stood frozen in place, his heart hammering. He had no idea if he had just defended his people or signed his own death sentence. Later that night, he sat on his bunk, running a hand through his hair. Rena sat across from him, her eyes wide. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" she whispered. "Yeah," Marcus said, forcing a grin. "I embarrassed myself in front of half the galaxy. You spoke against a noble. You spoke in front of the Empress. Marcus, they'll never forget this." "Good," Marcus muttered, lying back on his bunk. "Then maybe they'll start seeing us for what we really are." Rena shook her head but couldn't hide a small smile. For all his recklessness, Marcus had said what many of them felt but couldn't voice. In her private chamber, Seraphine stood once more before the viewport, gazing at the stars. General Karos waited at her side, his expression tense. "Majesty," he said quietly, "the nobles will not forget this. Already they question why you give this human so much attention. They say it is dangerous." Seraphine did not look away from the stars. "Dangerous, yes, but perhaps necessary." "What do you see in him?" the general asked. For a long moment Seraphine was silent. Then she answered, her voice calm but thoughtful. "I see unpredictability. I see a strength that does not come from crowns or fleets but from spirit. Humanity is young, yes, but youth can carry a fire that old empires have forgotten." She remembered the moment Marcus had stood against Lord Trassic. His voice had not been elegant. His words had not been polished, but they had been real. And truth, Seraphine thought, was rarer than gold. Perhaps, she wondered, it was time to learn from these humans. That night, while the nobles whispered in fear and anger, one thought echoed in Seraphine's mind. A single soldier with no crown, no power, and no polished words had shifted the weight of a room filled with rulers. Humanity's strength was not in technology or tradition. It was in their spirit, unpredictable and unbreakable. And that, she realized, might be the very thing the galaxy needed. The asteroid outpost had never been quieter. A sense of unease hung in the air, heavier than usual. Word of Marcus Hale's defiance against Lord Trassic had spread far and wide. Alien nobles whispered behind closed doors, questioning why the Empress tolerated the human soldier. Some even called for his immediate removal. For Marcus, however, life seemed unchanged. He trained with his squad mates, maintained his equipment, and occasionally joked to lighten the long hours. He had no idea that while he slept peacefully in his bunk, Plans were being made that could put him in grave danger. Far above the outpost, in orbit around the asteroid, Lady Seraphine Devora's flagship gleamed like a polished gemstone against the black void of space. Inside, Seraphine and her advisors convened in the War Council chamber. "Majesty," General Caro said, his voice grave. "The faction led by Lord Trassic grows bold. They view this human as a threat, and by extension your leniency as weakness. If you do not act, they may attempt an ambush." Seraphine's crimson eyes glowed faintly as she considered the report. "And what do you suggest?" she asked calmly. Caros's jaw tightened. "Removal, Your Majesty. The human cannot be allowed to influence the court or challenge our traditions." Seraphine shook her head slowly. "No, this human, Marcus Hale, has shown me courage and loyalty that no courtier has demonstrated in decades. If they wish to challenge me, they will also have to face him. Let us see who is truly loyal." The general's brow furrowed, but he knew better than to argue. Seraphine's decisions, once made, were absolute. Meanwhile, Marcus and his squad were performing a routine supply transport through the asteroid's outer docking bays. The mission seemed simple: deliver equipment to an allied alien ship docked nearby. The corridors were narrow and shadowed, with only faint lighting overhead. Marcus, unaware of the plotting above him, carried crates with his usual grin, joking with Rena and the others as they moved. "Watch your step, Hale," Rena said, careful not to trip on a stray wire. "Relax," Marcus replied. "Nothing on this asteroid can scare me." He was wrong. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the docking bay. Red lights flashed, painting the walls with an urgent glow. Alien officers shouted orders in unfamiliar tongues. From the shadows, armed attackers, members of Lord Trassic's faction, emerged. Their weapons glimmered ominously. The soldiers were trained and well-equipped, but Marcus's squad was caught off guard. "Ambush!" Rena yelled, drawing her sidearm. Marcus ducked instinctively, grabbing a crate for cover. His mind raced. "Stay calm, protect the supplies, and get out alive." The attackers moved swiftly, trying to separate the humans from the cargo. Marcus realized this was more than a simple skirmish. It was a test, though he didn't yet know by whom. The attackers were organized, experienced, and ruthless. Yet Marcus did not panic. He had trained for unexpected situations. He used the crates as barricades, pulled his squad mates behind cover, and directed them to move as a unit. Each decision, though improvised, was effective. As the firefight escalated, one of the attackers lunged toward the exit where Seraphine had coincidentally arrived for inspection. Marcus saw her just in time, her pale cloak flowing behind her as she moved with grace. Without thinking, he sprinted across the open corridor, dodging energy blasts. "Your Majesty, move!" he shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind. "Cover." Seraphine's crimson eyes widened, not in fear, but in surprise at his instinctive loyalty. You risked yourself for me," she whispered. Marcus didn't have time to answer. Another attacker advanced, but Marcus blocked him, pushing him back just enough to give Seraphine a chance to retreat. His squad followed closely, returning fire and keeping the attackers at bay. In the chaos, Marcus realized that this was no ordinary mission. The attackers were skilled enough to have studied their movements in advance. Every corridor, every hatch, every tactical point had been anticipated. They were trying to overwhelm him, to test not just his skill, but the loyalty he might show to the Empress. He understood then. This was not only a fight for survival, but a test of character. Marcus didn't falter. He shouted orders, directed his squad, and kept the Empress safe without hesitation. Every decision was instinctual, every movement precise. Seraphine, for her part, was amazed. She had led battles where thousands of soldiers followed her orders, yet none had shown such spontaneous courage for another's safety. Humans, she realized, possessed something unique, the ability to act selflessly without expectation, guided only by loyalty and instinct. The firefight raged through the docking bays. Sparks flew as energy blasts hit metal walls. Crates toppled over, sending supplies scattering across the floor. Marcus and his squad moved as one, each covering the other, each protecting the Empress whenever she was in danger. At one point, Marcus was thrown to the ground by a near blast, his helmet scraped, and his uniform scorched. Pain shot through his arm, but he pushed it aside. He saw Seraphine stumble slightly over debris. Without hesitation, he grabbed her hand again, helping her steady herself. "Come on," he shouted. "We're not leaving anyone behind." Her eyes softened as she looked at him. She could feel the strength in his conviction. This was not fear or recklessness. It was pure loyalty, the kind that commanded respect. Eventually, the attackers realized they were outmatched. Marcus's squad had fought with determination, improvisation, and unshakable coordination. Even the most skilled of Trasik's faction hesitated in the face of human unpredictability. The remaining attackers retreated, leaving the humans and Seraphine unharmed. When silence finally fell over the docking bay, the Empress took a deep breath. Marcus, exhausted, lowered himself to the ground, his uniform torn in places. He looked around, seeing his squad safe, the Empress unharmed, and the attackers gone. Seraphine approached him slowly. Her crimson eyes studied him carefully. "You risked everything for me," she said softly. "Not because I am Empress, not because I commanded you, but because you chose to." Marcus shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "I don't know any other way to do it," he said simply. For a moment, silence fell between them. It was a silence filled not with fear, but with understanding. Marcus had shown her what she had suspected all along. Humanity's true strength was not in fleets or weaponry, but in courage, loyalty, and the ability to act selflessly. That night, Seraphine stood again by her chamber's viewport looking at the endless stars. General Karos and Lady Kalith waited silently behind her. "Majesty," Karos said finally, "this human, he survived where few could. He protected you with instinct, not strategy. How do you wish to handle him?" Seraphine's crimson eyes did not leave the stars. "He has earned my respect," she said. "He has proven that rank and power are not the only measures of loyalty. If we are to lead, we must recognize the value of courage regardless of origin." Lady Kalith exchanged a glance with Karos. Both understood the risk of Seraphine's words, but neither dared oppose her. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his bunk, exhausted but smiling faintly. Rena and the others looked at him with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "You're insane," Rena whispered. "You just ran into an ambush, saved the Empress, and didn't even think twice." Marcus grinned, though fatigue tugged at his eyelids. "What can I say? Humans do things differently." And in the quiet of the asteroid outpost, as alarms died down and lights dimmed, one thought rang clear. Sometimes it is the simplest choices, the ones made from instinct and loyalty, that carry the greatest power. For Marcus Hale, that choice had been simple: protect the Empress, protect his squad, and trust in humanity's unpredictable strength. For Seraphine, it was a revelation. Perhaps the galaxy had underestimated humans. Perhaps they were not just soldiers or colonists, but something far more remarkable, beings capable of courage and loyalty that no empire could command and no protocol could predict. And somewhere in the shadows, whispers of this event began to spread. Across the fleets and stations of the galaxy, the story of the human soldier who stood fearless in an ambush and protected the Empress would travel far and wide. The test of loyalty was complete. Marcus had passed, not because he followed orders, but because he acted from the heart, and in doing so he had changed the way the Empress and perhaps the galaxy would view humanity forever. The asteroid outpost was quiet in the early hours, the soft hum of machinery the only sound breaking the darkness. Outside, distant stars glittered like scattered diamonds against the black sky, the galaxy stretching infinitely beyond human imagination. Inside the barracks, Marcus Hale lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His uniform was torn from the recent ambush, his arms bruised, and yet a faint smile tugged at his lips. Sleep did not come easily, not after everything that had happened. He had survived an attack, saved the Empress, and unknowingly earned the attention of the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. He had no idea how much his life was about to change. Seraphine Devora, the Galactic Empress, had spent the night in her private chamber overlooking the stars. For centuries she had ruled with precision, power, and often fear. Her empire stretched across countless systems, her name carrying authority that could command loyalty or terror. And yet, for the first time in her long life, she had found herself fascinated by a human, Marcus Hale, a simple soldier, unassuming, reckless in ways she could not predict. Yet, in his simple actions, the fist bump, the words at the reception, and his courage during the ambush, he had revealed something profound about humanity. Something the galaxy had forgotten. True strength came not from fleets or weapons, but from loyalty, courage, and the willingness to act selflessly. She had made a decision. Tonight she would reveal her identity to Marcus and formally acknowledge what he had done. Marcus was surprised when a soft knock echoed on his door. "Come in," he called, expecting one of his squad mates checking in. The door slid open, and there she stood, Seraphine Devora, pale and tall, her crimson eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She did not bow and she did not hesitate. She simply stepped into the room. Marcus froze. Your Majesty?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. Seraphine raised a hand gently. "Call me Seraphine," she said, her voice calm, almost human in its warmth. Marcus blinked. "Wait. You're the Empress?" Seraphine nodded. "I am. And you are Marcus Hale, the human soldier who saved my life." Marcus's jaw nearly dropped. I did? I mean, I didn't even know it was you out there." Seraphine allowed a small smile to touch her lips. "Exactly. You acted not out of fear, obligation, or desire for recognition. You acted because it was right. That is rare among rulers, diplomats, and even soldiers. You, human, have shown me a perspective that no courtier has in decades." Marcus scratched the back of his head, speechless. Finally he said, "So, wait. You're saying I did a good thing, even though I was just me?" "Yes," she said simply, "and that is why I have summoned you here." The two of them sat in silence for a moment, the distant stars casting a pale glow across the room. Marcus tried to process the enormity of the situation. The most powerful ruler in the galaxy, the Galactic Empress herself, was acknowledging him, not as a soldier, not as an inferior species, but as an equal in spirit. Seraphine studied him carefully. "Marcus, I have decided that your actions will not go unnoticed. Across the galaxy, humanity is often underestimated. They see you as young, reckless, or even weak. But you have shown what I believe many humans can do. Loyalty, courage, and honesty are not bound by rank or species. They are universal, and yet they are rare." Marcus's grin returned, albeit sheepishly. "So, what does that mean for me?" Seraphine's eyes glimmered. "It means you are recognized as more than a soldier. You are an example, a symbol, the story of your actions. How a human protected the Empress without fear or hesitation will travel through the fleets and stations. And I will ensure that it is remembered." Marcus leaned back, trying to comprehend. "You're giving me recognition? Like, officially?" "Yes," she replied. "Recognition for bravery, yes, but also recognition for what it represents. Humanity's unpredictable strength, the courage that comes without fear of consequence. That is something no fleet, no weapon, and no empire can create. It comes from within. And you, Marcus Hale, have shown it to me." The next morning, the news of Marcus's deeds spread quickly. Across the asteroid outpost, soldiers whispered about the human who had saved the Empress. Alien officers, some still skeptical, could not deny the facts. Marcus had acted with courage, strategy, and instinct. He had done what few could. Even Lord Trassic, though fuming with anger, had to acknowledge the outcome. In a rare council meeting, he spoke begrudgingly. The human soldier, he survived where most would have fallen. His loyalty to the Empress is remarkable. Though I still question your judgment, Majesty, I cannot deny his impact. Seraphine, seated calmly, allowed a faint smile. Then let it be remembered. Courage is measured not by title or station, but by action. Marcus Hale embodies this truth. Let all who serve in my fleets and stations understand. Respect and recognition are earned, not demanded. Marcus's squadmates found him shortly after the announcement. Rena approached first, her face lit with disbelief. Wait, what just happened? She asked, her voice trembling. Marcus grinned, though he still looked half in shock. Apparently, I'm famous now. Somehow fist-bumping the Empress and saving her from an ambush makes me important. Rena shook her head, laughing despite herself. I can't believe this. You're going to be remembered across the galaxy. Me? I can barely get people to listen to me on patrol. Marcus shrugged. I guess sometimes the simplest things matter the most. A fist bump, doing the right thing. That's enough. Seraphine watched the small human celebration from her private chamber. For centuries, she had commanded fear and respect through power. Yet, here was a human, small and unassuming, who had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. Influence could come from actions, not fear. She leaned against the viewport, her eyes on the sparkling stars. Humanity, she thought, had an unpredictable strength. They could inspire loyalty, create trust, and change perceptions with gestures as simple as a fist bump or words spoken from the heart. And perhaps, she mused, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Weeks later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the asteroid outpost, looking at the stars. Ships from countless systems passed by, docking and departing. He thought about the events of the past weeks, the fist bump, the reception, the ambush, and now the recognition from the Empress herself. Rena joined him, smiling. So, hero of the galaxy, what are you thinking? Marcus chuckled. I'm thinking, life just got a lot more interesting. I mean, who else can say they fist-bumped the Galactic Empress and survived an ambush with her? Rena laughed. Just try not to get yourself killed before she sends your story across the stars, okay? Marcus grinned. No promises. But if it happens, at least people will know humans are capable of more than they think. And in that moment, as they watched fleets of ships glide silently through the void, Marcus realized something simple yet profound. Sometimes, courage and loyalty mattered more than rank, titles, or even technology. A human soldier could stand alongside an empress, and a simple gesture could ripple through the galaxy. Seraphine, on her flagship orbiting the asteroid, received reports from across her empire. The story of Marcus Hale traveled faster than any fleet. Aliens and humans alike spoke of the soldier who had fought with instinct, who had protected the Empress, and who had shown the unpredictable power of humanity. The Empress allowed herself a rare smile. She had ruled through centuries of power, yet never had a ruler been so affected by the actions of a single human. And she knew that somewhere in the galaxy, that unpredictable strength would inspire others. Because Marcus Hale was not just a soldier, he was a symbol of what humanity could be, courageous, loyal, and unafraid to act for what was right. And, for Seraphine, that was worth more than any crown, fleet, or empire. As the story spread across fleets, outposts, and distant planets, one fact became clear. Humanity had earned a new kind of respect. They were unpredictable, courageous, and capable of inspiring even the most powerful rulers of the galaxy. And it all began with one human soldier, one fist bump, and one choice to act with loyalty and heart. Marcus Hale, ordinary in many ways, had become extraordinary in the galaxy's history. And somewhere, high above the asteroid, Seraphine Devora, the Galactic Empress, quietly whispered, "Well done, human. Well done."